So this is really a very significant day because we're finishing the tractate of Bikkurim and we're finishing the tractate, the order of seeds. So tomorrow we'll begin Shabbat and we'll begin the order of Moed, of festivals. And I thought it would be useful just to take a step back and see where we got to in terms of the tractate, in terms of the tractate of the Bikkurim, although, of course, stepping all the way back into the order, we didn't start together, but the order begins at Barachot. So we've begun with Barachot, and then we've gone through Barachot, our blessings of things we enjoy, and then we've gone through all the offerings of these things that we enjoy. So I guess we can see that's connected. And then we're finishing with the first, so we've begun with Barachot and we're finishing with first fruits. And in this tractate, the first chapter looked at what kind of people need to bring first fruits. Okay, you can see we're close to Barachot, what kind of products are liable. We learned about boundary cases and routes to the land. Routes are really important. In the second chapter, we morphed into the comparisons between Bikkurim and other kinds of offerings, and then comparisons between different kinds of trees and then animals. Before in the third chapter, getting into the detail of how we bring Bikkurim, how it works, status of Bikkurim and more connections to the land. And then the fourth chapter goes back into comparisons between obligations of people who are male and female and indeterminate. And we said yesterday that this last chapter is really copied from the second chapter of the Tosefta, and actually doesn't appear in major manuscripts. I mean, we are studying it actually because it's on the daily cycle, but it doesn't appear in the Kaufman manuscript, which is our general manuscript. The Rambam doesn't comment on it. It's not in the Jerusalem Talmud. It's a late edition. Let's jump back into the Mishnah. It follows the same pattern, by the way, as the Mishnah on the koi. Remember, the koi is the animal that is neither domestic nor wild. And the Mishnah then talks about ways in which it's like a domestic animal, ways it's like a wild animal, ways it's like both, and ways it's like neither. And we're going to follow exactly the same pattern. In the Tosefta, actually, these Mishnah appear in order. The hermaphrodite right after the koi. So yesterday we dealt with why the hermaphrodite is like men and why he's like or she's like women. And today we're going to ask the question: Keitzad shaveh la'anashim ve'lanashim? How is the hermaphrodite like men and women? And it's very interesting that the Mishnah, I think of this Mishnah as very modern, and I know it's not modern, and I know it's not connected with today's notions of gender fluidity, but in some ways it's very modern. And it starts by articulating what we might think of as basic human rights or principles. Someone who strikes him or curses him is liable, just as in the case of men or women. You have to treat a hermaphrodite just with the same respect you treat a man or a woman. Someone who unwittingly kills him goes into exile, and if on purpose receives a death penalty. Just like in the case of men or women. His mother, his mother must bring an offering, just as in the case of men and women. This is after his birth. And he can inherit just as in the case of men or women. So I guess, of course, in biblical law, men inherit first, but women do inherit if there are no men. So the hermaphrodite will inherit if there isn't a man to take precedence over him. And then this weird puzzle that we saw in the discussion about the koi. Remember that in the case of the koi, the Mishnah says, look, what if someone swears I'll be a Nazir if this animal is neither wild nor domesticated. And the Mishnah comes back and says exactly the same thing. If someone says, I'll be a Nazir if this is a man and a woman, the Bartanura here, by the way, translates and a woman as or a woman. A man or a woman. And that makes more sense. And the Mishnah of the Koi that we looked at actually had man or woman, I think, in the Kaufman manuscript. Anyway, someone says here, I'm going to be a Nazir if this is a man and a woman or a man or a woman. Hareza Nazir. He is a Nazir. And generally, the halacha is that we treat these vows strictly. So in an indeterminate case, like someone who has both male and female organs, if someone makes that vow, we are going to interpret it strictly. And we'll see in the next Mishnah that if he makes exactly the opposite vow, we still call him a Nazir. That's the fourth Mishnah. And then we ask, Keitzad eino shaveh lo la'anashim v'lo la'nashim? In what way is he different? Is he not similar is he different from both men and women? And apologies for the pointing here. I had to I constructed this text more or less from the Kaufman, but I had to type it out, and I can't type out with vowel points. Ein chayavim al tumato. One doesn't. There's no liability on his uncleanness. And this refers actually to liability if you enter the temple after coming into contact with his uncleanness. And you don't burn truma, for example, that comes into contact with his uncleanness. And that's because all these halachot about uncleanness are, if you like, are lechumra, are in case of doubt. We don't know because we don't know whether he's certainly a man or certainly a woman. All issues to do with his uncleanness are unclear. So, for example, you might, if truma is certainly tameh, you'd have to destroy it because you can't give it to a kohen. But if it's possibly tameh, that's different. We can't actively destroy it. So we wait until it became certainly tameh. What are the other kind of gray areas? You can't value him like men or women. At the end of Vayikra, there's some Pusukim that allow someone to make a vow to give the value of a person to the Mikdash. And again, this is very contentious today. The estimated value of a man is 50 shekels and of a woman is 30 shekels. We can't value an androgynous on that basis because we don't know whether he's a man or a woman. So the halacha is eino nerach. We can't value him. We can't value him like men and we can't value him like women. And then we go on, ein nimkar le'eved ivri. We can't sell him as an eved ivri. Loch anashim v'loch anashim, neither like a man nor like a woman. A man, if he's over the age of majority, can be sold as a Hebrew slave, typically when he can't repay a debt. I mean, he may be sold or he may sell himself for 6 years in order to repay his debts. The woman can't be sold. And kind of reflexively, a man is a father. Again, this is very shocking today, but a father will learn about this in the Mishnah of Kiddushin. A father is allowed to sell his daughter as a maidservant, as an Amma Ivriya, when she's below the age of majority. So this idea of selling someone into slavery, into Hebrew slavery, by the way, applies to men when they're adults and to women before they're adults. But if we don't know whether this person is male or female, then there's no age at which there's no age at which these halachot really apply to them. If the hermaphrodite is an adult woman, she can't be sold. And if the hermaphrodite is a below the age of majority man, then he can't be sold. So That's why the Mishnah says, Ein nimkar le'eved ivri. Whichever way you work it, you can't do it. You can't sell them as an eved ivri. And then a reflection of the previous Mishnah. Imamar hareini nazir shezeh lo ish velo isha. Exactly the opposite from the Mishnah above. If someone says, I'll be a nazir, if he's neither a man nor a woman, then he becomes a nazir. It seems that making this vow to be a nazir turns you, if you basically triggers nazirut. It sort of triggers a positive outcome, whether you make it one way or the other, with regard to an androgynous, a hermaphrodite. And then Rabbi Yossi concludes, androgynous bria bifnei atzma hu velo yachlu chachamim lahachriya alav im hu ish o isha. The hermaphrodite is a unique creature, and sages couldn't decide whether he was a man or a woman. But aval tumtum eino ken. A tumtum is someone whose genetic organs are just not evident. They're not visible at all. So we have no idea really what his, and sometimes, by the way, they develop late. So it may become apparent later in his or her life what the gender is. But the tumtum refers to someone whose organs are effectively hidden. So we have no idea whether they are male or female, unlike a hermaphrodite who actually has both male and female organs. And so the Mishnah continues, so the hermaphrodite with male and female organs is bria bifnei atzma, a unique creature, but a tumtum, Rabbi Yossi says, aval tumtum eino ken, it's not like that. Pa'amim shehu ish, pa'amim shehu isha. Sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's a man, and sometimes it's a woman. And that's the end of the Mishnah of Bikkurim. And so we can say the Hadran. Hadran alach masechet Bikkurim vehadrach alan. We will return to you, tractate Bikkurim, and you will return to us. Da'atan alach masechet Bikkurim ve'da'tach alan. Our mind is on you, tractate Bikkurim, and your mind is on us. We will not lo nit nashay minach masechet Bikkurim. We will not forget you, tractate Bikkurim. Velo tit nashay minan, and you will not forget us. Lo ba'al mahadain ve'lo ba'al mahaba. Not in this world and not in the next world.